welcome back to Hopinions. So this is part 2 of our Goose Island special. If you're here, you've hopefully already listened to part 1, where we've drunk some amazing beers. We've had Goose Island 312, we've had the IPA, and we've had the Brewery Yard Stock Pale Ale as well, which, Martin, you particularly loved.
Yeah, I loved it. Still disappointed we shared it. Let's not do that again.
Okay, greedy man. There are 4 of us around the table, though, so who's here with us tonight?
Hey guys, so yeah, Josh again from Goose Island Brewery. I'm the European brand ambassador, so look after events and trainings in Europe. Not from the States, actually from South Wales, which you might not pick up from accent either. But yeah, that's me.
My name's Johnny Tyson. I'm the Beer Knowledge and Education Manager for Pioneer. We look after Goose in the UK and Europe, and I look after all the training and knowledge for the company.
Okay, so in part 1 of this, what's becoming an epic show, we did discuss the first poll that we ran with you guys, that we ran on Twitter this week, which was around the decision behind Goose selling to ABI. We had some chat around that. We ran 3 polls as part of this particular episode, and we're going to cover the following 2 polls in this half of the show, but to get us to that, we need some lubrication. So what have you got for us now?
Yeah, well, I've got a couple of beers. Let's grab Halia. So what I've got is one of our sour sisters. So we have 5 sour sisters. Halia starts her life as a saison, primary fermentation, and then what we do is we actually put her into wine barrels, which are inert, and then we'll go through a secondary fermentation with some Brettanomyces and about 55 pounds of fresh peaches, and we'll age her for about 10 months, so really taking on those nice notes that you'll get, those barnyard notes from the wild yeast. She comes in around 7.9%, and all of our sour sisters names, the names are all after women, and they have stories behind them. So one that we have, Gillian Anderson. She used to work at our brew pub in Clybourne before she became famous. It was a beer that was brewed for her by Greg Hall. Great beer as well. But Halia is actually, I guess, a sad beer in a way, but it's a beer of remembrance. It's a Hawaiian translation is to remember a loved one. So one of our brewers' best friends actually died to cancer, and her favourite fruit was a peach, and she always wanted to brew beer with it. So this was a beer that we brewed back a few years ago in memory of her. But let's try it. It's a fantastic saison with a bit of Brett, and I'm just going to open that up.
While you're doing that, when you say inert barrel, does that mean the barrel is giving nothing to the beer?
Exactly.
So it is just a vessel.
Yes.
So you could put it in any vessel.
You could do, but I think with a lot of the barrels, that are used, they do 2 things. Some of them contain, traditionally would have contained Brett in the barrels. Very hard to get rid of completely. You can't completely sterilize a barrel. It's very, that's been used and it's out. It's very, very hard to do. But also barrels also allow kind of a micro amount of oxidation. So rather like wine aging in a barrel, part of that aging process is the transference of oxygen in and out of the barrel, and the barrels can do that. The wood contracts and expands, but it's in a very, very slow way that helps very gentle aging, exactly like we would with wine.
Okay, so although it's inert, there's still a rationale for using the barrel. It's
inert in the way the oak from the barrel, whatever barrel you're using, gives absolutely no flavour to the beer. And obviously, and it's a great time to say that historically all barrels used in brewing would have been aged in sun, they would have been boiled or various other methods of cleaning them before they were used as barrels, specifically because brewers historically did not want to have any flavour coming from the wood into the beer.
Okay, well I suppose before we get on to poll 2, let's have a go at this one.
Yeah.
Cheers. Do you think it has more of a Brett nose than the Brewery Yard from the last episode, or less?
Less.
Yeah.
Definitely less.
Yeah, definitely less.
I think the peach is a bit punchier. It's coming alongside the Brett and the aroma.
I mean, as you were going through the description, most people that have listened to previous shows will know that you pretty much describe everything that I hate in a beer. So this
fruit and Brett.
Well,
definitely the Bretty
farmyard, saison, everything. It's just ticking all the wrong boxes for me.
Although you did do peach in your collaboration beer for the last Beer O'Clock show.
We did, yeah, and we sat there and we actually peeled a certain amount of peaches. Peeled? Did we peel them or stone them? I don't know what you do with peaches.
Do you do? How do you get it?
We didn't peel them. We got the stone out.
Originally, so we use Cook Farms, a local farm that we use in Michigan, that supply one of our fruit. So we still put the pith and everything in, but all the fruits that we used were as they were full and stuffed in, which took a lot of time. Everything's still hand done at Goose as well. We still hand put in the fruit for the bunghole, but now luckily they process it for us. They break it down. But there's still the pith. The stone is still in.
So everything's used.
Everything's used because actually stone adds a very interesting flavour when you put peach stone in. You can sometimes you can get that
almost like an almondy, like cherry stones in the cherry in the Madame Rose. We get
Thank fuck that's not coming through.
Yeah.
Not being a massive fan of it. But no, I'm finding that, I mean, in terms of the flavour, that's just really, really sweet.
It is.
You get those peaches
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
balancing.
But there's not much sugar in there because Brett is a natural sugar and oxygen scavenger. So Brett will eat sugars that Saccharomyces, normal ale yeast, and lager yeast as well. They can't eat.
Because what you've managed to avoid is because sometimes if too much fruit is used, you almost get like a syrupy context and texture to it, don't you? And this definitely hasn't.
We
got
just
that.
want to impart the flavour without the sweetness, which is what we get. And actually, we could do a whole episode on beer and food pairing. Migration week, we did a beer and food pairing with this beer, which was what did we use? It was a
creme brulee.
It was a creme brulee, and it was fantastic because it was a really rich creme brulee, and it kind of brought a little bit more of the Brett out of the beer, and the peaches just absolutely shone through, and it just
your eyes lit up there, didn't they?
Yeah.
You've got more of a sweet tooth than I have.
Pretty much
one of my favourite pairings.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing thing that beer can do. I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but I used to work as a sommelier in the wine trade in restaurants. But something that amazing that beer can do is you can get a dry beer like this and have that with a sweet dessert. You can't. It's really. I've yet to have a dry wine with a sweet dessert and for it to work. You always have to have really, really sweet wines like Sauterne and Tokai and ice wines and things like that. With beer, you can have this amazing, refreshing beer with your really rich, sweet dessert. And it's an amazing thing that beer can do when you're looking at beer and food pairing. It's incredibly versatile, and even if you're having a dinner with wine in it as well, finish with a beer like this and a sweet dessert like creme brulee. It's absolutely amazing.
Note to self: we'll do the food and beer pairing with these two as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it is a very dry finish to it, which works really well.
Yeah.
It balances out to the last beer that we did.
Oh yeah, definitely, because like
as
I
well.
say, the Brett is less, and that probably is because of the sweetness coming through as well. But even just on the nose, there's less of the like the Belgian funk, for want of a better phrase, coming through.
Yeah.
Hopinions, 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 Hopinions.
Okay, the second poll we put out on Twitter. The question was, does big beer ownership impact on your buying decisions? This one got a lot of votes. This was 223 votes, and we had yes at 57%, we had no at 32%, and we had don't care at 11%.
We did actually have a couple of people comment as well that surely no and don't care are the same thing, and I was like, really? Do we need to get into that now? Yeah.
I disagree with that. I mean,
I disagree with that.
I think
Me too, because no is a definite decision. Don't
Yeah.
know is
Yeah.
I don't care either way. Yes or no.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we had quite a few comments, and just go through a few of the brief ones we had. So Luon Brew, who again is a regular contributor to the show. To an extent, I'll try to pick indie beers where possible. I certainly drink less Meantime or Camden than I used to. And that was echoed by a few other people. Yes Ale Blog, Miles Lambert, Essex Baller and Bob Maxfield all said fairly much the same thing. Guy at Brew Guy, it definitely does. We buy you out, change brew, drop the gravity, market does want it more, shut the brewery, don't buy it. So very much it affects his decision making process. Steve Lamond, beers I've known, not always, but I bear it in mind. And one which will probably link in a bit more to what we come to at the end. Mark Graham, sorry for going on, but it'd be great to see how many people who answered yes would turn down Goose Island Bourbon County Stout. So many people would answer yes to this in America, but turn up every year queuing outside their local store for Bourbon County. So there's a couple of more bits to say on this, but I think it's time for you guys to have your opinion on this one.
Yeah, I think for me, impacts my decision. It all depends on the beer that comes out at the end of the brewing process. If I've tasted the beer and it's great, for me, who owns it, who's acquired it, whatever, it doesn't really matter for me. It's about the quality of that beer. If you do have a brewery acquisition where you look to the extreme, the recipes have been changed, been watered down, of course I'm going to be the same person to be like, I'm not a fan of that. If that ever happened to Goose Island beer, I wouldn't be here. That's not something that we've had 5 years. This is not what the acquisition is about, the partnership's about. It's quite simple for me. I want to drink great beer, but also for me the choice is more, do I want to drink local, or that's probably where my decision comes in. If I want to drink something local because I've gone to Leeds for the day or I've gone to Manchester for the day to visit the area, personally I will drink local for that day because I've gone to that area. I want to see what the beer scene's like. So
And you can't buy something you can't buy in London.
Yeah.
It almost depends on my mood for that day. It's the same as what is your favourite beer. You go on that. I like drinking darker beers in the winter. For me, if I go to a local area, of course I want to drink local beer because that gives them their identity. Would I turn down some of the bigger owned brewery beers that I enjoy? No, I wouldn't, because I still enjoy them.
So it's how it comes out. It's
How it
what
comes
ends up
out.
in your glass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If it comes out crap one week, then I'll stop drinking
Yeah.
it.
I think a lot of people said that as well. That there were a lot of comments in terms of as long as the beer is good, people are happy to drink it, and if there's a drop in quality, that's when people start to question whether or not they want to drink that beer anymore.
But I think sometimes, when we get feedback through things like Twitter, when people say yes, it's changed, yes, it's different, and we know the reality is that the recipe, the quality, the taste panels have all maintained that this is the same tasting beer that it ever was. I've spent my life much of my life working in wine and beer, and done lots of exams which all are about blind tastings. I wonder if you blind tasted to people on it, would they still perceive that, or is it part of that, the sort of sway of opinion is that we don't like big beer getting into this area, but whatever, so therefore I'm not going to sit around a campfire and drink my beer when I'm a camping trip going, it hasn't changed because everyone else is saying it has. Maybe there's an element of that. When you talk to the brewers and you look at the same yeast and you see the flavour panels, the lab analysis that these beers go through, I can't imagine there'll be many beers around the world that go through more analysis to ensure that they do taste the same and the quality is totally top-notch and consistent the whole way through than the Goose Island beers, to be honest.
Where do you sit on this one, Steve?
I think it's a difficult one. I've got to say, I've probably not been as bothered as some people have about who's bought beer and who owns beer now. I mean, I certainly wasn't up in arms when Camden sold their stake. I was ambivalent when Meantime sold their stake, and to me it's just like, I think I'm going to err on the side of if the beer's good, then it's good. I'm not going to stop buying a beer because of who owns the company. That's not why I'm into this. I want to drink beer because I want to taste different things. I want to experience different things, and I don't really care.
I think
Who
we care
yeah.
more because we feel like we've got an invested interest in beer. If I buy a Mars bar and it's the company's Mars has been taken over, provided Mars still tastes the same, costs the same, or better still costs less, I probably don't care.
Yeah.
True.
Okay.
I'm not suddenly going to turn around and say a 4-pack of Mars bar for £1. Oh no, I don't want to buy it now because it used to be £1.50.
Okay, so put it into that context for me. If tomorrow, and I doubt it will happen, but if tomorrow somebody announces the takeover of Magic Rock and suddenly Cannonball tastes different, yes, I'm going to have an issue with that because that's the beer that I go to time after time after time.
But what if it doesn't taste different and it gets cheaper and is available more readily?
I'm going to be
I'll never see that.
I hope. I kind of. I hope for the day that
Josh Smith.
that you see Cannibal on the shelves in a supermarket. I don't think it will happen, but for me, it's about is the beer that I love is it still readily available and does it still taste the way I want it to taste?
And I think that's the difference with craft with companies like ours, and we're not the only one buying into craft breweries. Is that there is absolutely nothing to be gained if you buy something like Goose and go, great, we bought this brand and we're going to change the recipe, we're going to cut the alcohol, we're going to do this, we're going to totally change the beer. That is a very 1980s way of thinking about business. You're not buying a brand, you're buying the product, and there's no way you would buy a product like this and think, I'm going to completely change it because everyone's going to buy it just because of the label. No, people who are into craft beer are not interested in just the label. They're interested in the beer inside the bottle. And you can't, if you change it, you've missed the point of buying the company. The point of buying the company is you're buying the recipe, you're buying that quality, and you don't want that to change. Otherwise, there's nothing in it for you spending that money on the company. It would be crazy to buy a company like Goose Island. We're going to change all the beers. That wouldn't even make any sense.
There needs to be that fit as well, that fit together. So it's not that AB InBev, can just go buy any brewery and that's it. Actually, as much as AB InBev wants to buy a brewery, it's actually the brewery they're buying has to fit with them. The ethos has to be the same. And you talk about Jasper at Camden, you talk about John Hall with Goose. The whole thing is these guys wanted their beer to be reached by more people. That was their concept. AB InBev could offer that whilst still allowing autonomy. And that fit. There might be other brewers where it wouldn't fit, therefore wouldn't recommend selling, or they wouldn't sell.
And they're very happy to do it. No one forced them into it. It wasn't a hostile takeover. It was a very happy, partnership takeover.
That much is obvious, but it's been suggested from many quarters that one of the strategies that AB InBev employs to buy craft brands with the intention to let them fade and die away. So that they can.
That would be a terrible business plan.
It would, but so what do you guys say to those sorts of comments that are frequently thrown at you on social media?
Right, number one, as a businessman myself, why would I apply for a job that I know they're going to basically strangle and kill me off? Definitely not going to. For me, that doesn't make any sense. AB InBev have seen. Speaking from I work directly with Goose in my job, and I work directly with the guys in Chicago. I'm all about Goose, and for me, AB InBev have seen there's an opportunity. There are flavors of beers that they don't have in their portfolio, so of course they want to add these in. And it's a growing market. It's such a growing market. Why would AB InBev want to acquire a partner with a brewery and then change everything and cheapen the recipes and kill it and turn it all pale? It makes no sense. Then you're not going to be in that market.
There's over 4,500 breweries in the States. There's 1,500 more in the UK, plus not including all the other craft breweries around the world. If you bought 5 or 6 breweries and closed them down, it ain't going to make a dot of difference on the craft beer market. You're not going to kill the craft beer market. That is a business proposition commercially makes absolutely no sense at all.
For me as well, just rolling back to the last episode where we tried Brewery Yard, the reason that we can make beers like Brewery Yard and spend time resurrecting old recipes, actually, not all breweries can do that. They're not money-making schemes. We're not going to make probably any money on Brewery Yard itself. It's actually, about bringing back styles and passion. We want to grow a market that, Goose Island, of course, want to grow a market of innovation and new beer. AB InBev want to grow a market of beer. They want to be part of it. They have been for a long time.
But I guess the question comes from though that in the UK especially, with Chinnery being around for like the last 40 years, the reason they came into existence was because big beer, as it was in the UK, 4, 5, 6 breweries were buying up all the other small breweries, and generally those beers did die out.
Yeah, agreed. 60s and 70s and perhaps the 80s. Yeah,
these comments
absolutely
generally come from people remembering what's happened in the past, and it probably happens in the States, I imagine, as well.
And perhaps that did happen in the past, in other countries as well. But I don't think that's a reasonable business proposition now. I don't, buying up, when the big 6, we're talking about the big 6 in the UK, 7 if you include Guinness. You talk about the power of those breweries, largely in the 70s and early 80s until lager really took over. It was a totally different market, and they acted totally differently as well. they were also producing a varieties of beer. They were producing cask ale as well. People like Bass and Incoop and all these. They were producing lots of beers. So perhaps they did use those kind of techniques in the marketplace. But I don't think someone like a what we might call big beer in your Twitter users call big beer. They can't suddenly produce Goose IPA out of magic. They can't produce a beer with that kind of authenticity and that kind of background and that kind of love out in the market. So you're gonna, so Goose has to produce Goose. No one else can produce Goose IPA. Only Goose can. And the idea of closing it down would be, what on earth have you paid that money for? Because if I drink an IPA and AB InBev, for the sake of argument, decide to close down Goose because they want to clamp down on the craft beer movement, I'm going to be drinking another IPA. I'm not going to suddenly start. I don't drink IPA anymore because Goose has closed down. I'll drink something else. That makes no sense at all. There's 4,500 breweries in the US. There's 1,500 breweries here. There's plenty of other options. If they close down Goose, it make no difference on my choice as a craft beer drinker.
So do you think big brewers, big beer, as we're using the phrase, do enough to let people know that though? I mean,
well, they haven't closed. I don't know. Have they closed down any of the breweries? I don't think we have.
Perception still exists. So, and perception means quite a lot to people because it's whatever walk of life it is. People use perception as a lot of their guiding thoughts, and what they say is about perception, whatever that might be.
But at the end of the day, we haven't. We've ABI have bought, I believe it's 8 breweries in the US over the last 5 or 6 years. There's a few breweries in other parts like Camden and other breweries around the world. ABI is investing in them. They're great breweries that produce amazing beers, and ABI see great prospects in them. So investing in them and getting those beers out to more people. There's no need to buy something and close it down. That'd be insane use of money.
I think what you were saying about perception though, it's a really interesting one for me because sort of starting with Goose last year and doing these events like Migration, where we're doing these events and bringing it to people and getting local people involved. There is that perception, but the amount of people you speak to and you're talking about recipes that haven't changed, you're talking about the way that Goose is, people don't know about it, and when you talk about them, it kind of almost switches the light back on, and that for me is about we need to be more open and talk to more people, which is I guess why me and Johnny and people like us have sort of got jobs at AB InBev to help look after these craft brands and work with them so that we can be more open and honest, because there's no sort of skeletons in the closet. This is what's happened.
So how does it feel to be part of, once ABI and Sad Miller become one, you will be part of the world's even biggest beer company? Does that make you feel any different about anything? Any trepidation or thoughts about that?
I mean, luckily for me, I'm Josh. I work for Goose Island, and actually, to be fair, I only work with Goose. I work with the States. I go over there, and to be honest, it doesn't make much difference to my job or my time. I'll still be doing my same job, and for me, I'm the Goose guy. So.
For me too, I teach about beer. I'm a beer sommelier and cicerone. I teach people about beer, not just our brands. We go around to bars, to restaurants, to pubs. We go to wholesalers and distributors and sales reps. And I spend most of my time teaching people about beer, not just our brands, but beer. Like you would go into wine school and learn about wine. That's my passion. I love educating people about it. I spend a lot of my time managing and being a buyer for retail, and then running restaurants and pubs and bars myself. And I want to share that knowledge with people so that the customer gets a much better experience. They get a much better quality of bartender or server, can talk about beer in a great way and really impart the talk about flavour. And that's not going to change for me. Because that's my job, and they've invested that in me, and they've taken me from largely the independent sector. I've worked for small independently owned bars and restaurants and a small distributor and small specialist shops and things like that in my life, and really I don't see anything changing with that merge of the two companies, because my job is to engage with customers, whether those customers be people who run bars, pubs, or whether they be the drinkers at the end of the day. Josh and I are out there. We can talk about our beer because we think it's a great beer, and we're happy to talk about it, and I think that's ever going to change.
Barely noticed but you were happy to talk about it, to be honest. Ben noticed that so far.
No,
So you start the ball rolling, we don't stop.
Yeah, I'm going to come in on that actually, because one of the things that you two guys are displaying is absolute passion for what you do. You both really care about what it is you're doing, and that, for me, that very much links into the third poll that we ran, which asked the question of, is selling up the same as selling out? And this was probably the one that it didn't get as many votes as the others, but had a lot of people commenting on it as well, in terms of got them thinking about it. And I've got to say, we had a lot of people get in touch and say, I might want to change my answer to the previous two polls as a result of what you've just asked there. So just to cover a few of the answers before we get into what's going to be the final beer of this marathon that it's turned into, the 2 episodes that we've ended up doing.
We're going with a light session beer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So 143 people voted on this one. 15% voted yes, 53% voted no, and 32% voted it's none of our business. And just some of those comments. So Dave Martin at RDG Martin said, "No way you can prevent someone from cashing in on their investment of either money or effort." Miles Lambert, "To be brutally honest, how can we judge simply on the facts of the sale, not knowing people's personal circumstances?" Joe Hill at Multiplex Rant, "It's difficult to judge unless you're in that situation. If someone offered me millions for my business, I'd take it." And Thomas Marshall at Essex Baller said, "No, because you can set up to a group consortium and still have control, or you can sell on a partial amount and remain in charge." So those were the views on this one. And I suppose this is where we tried to get more personal about things, in terms of the brand, the beers, and what they offer to things. So, guys, what are your views on this one?
I guess, from when I read the question, selling up and selling out, I mean, obviously selling out has those negative connotations behind it. Even talking about before about that point of time in John's life when he needed heavy investment to get the brewery to the next level. He said before, 23 years of starting from a brew pub up to supplying beer for 23 states, John turning 70. It could have been an easy decision to almost just sell the brewery to anyone to cash in and basically back off, but that's not what John took. A long time to it wasn't just AB InBev that he'd considered. There were other options, but it seemed like the perfect fit, and that's mainly because he needed somebody that was going to have the same passion and interest, that was going to look after the brewery. And again, as I said before, John's still involved. I only started last year, and John and me have been out on dinners and gone to events and danced to the Pogues a lot of times on events.
By the way, hate name droppers.
Yeah.
Just for a mention.
You've done it now, Josh.
I did read a few bits about the block party where he did a bit of speaking, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
And a couple of the bloggers, Rachel Brew and Hopinions Gentleman, both commented about everyone was listening to what he was saying.
Yeah.
About his passion for the beers, his knowledge of the beers, and just the way he came across. And like you say, he could have chucked this in.
Be sitting on a beach in the Bahamas by now,
Yeah, he could have Richard Branson on an island.
It's his passion, it's his core, it's within him. It's been his life, and it's been his life, it's been his son's life, and it continues to be. And the interest in Block Party was amazing. That was the first time, we're the first country outside the US, first place anywhere to take Block Party from Chicago and do it in the UK, in Shoreditch. So what the hell is Block Party?
Before you go into that, one of the beers you were doing there, I think we've got coming up.
Which beer was that?
You're rushing into the next one.
We already did IPA. I mean, that was there.
What could it be?
What could it be?
Has it spent time in barrel?
Possibly.
The one and only.
Yeah.
Could be that one. Yeah, it might be Bourbon County Stout. Yeah, I'm gonna crack this open.
Okay, so what is a block party? I do need to know this because I still didn't get it from the blogs I read anyway.
I mean, it's a big culture in Chicago. Everybody does a block party. A block party is basically, it's a party on your block.
Are we literally talking
It's
like
a street party. If you're in England, you're in
It's
the
a
UK,
street
you're in a
party.
street party. Yeah.
Everybody does one. Goose Island's been, Goose Island's block party's been happening every year for the last 5 years, and it's hugely popular. We shut down the roads outside the brewery in the sort of warehouse area that we operate in, and we basically get great bands, great local lineup, great range of beers, and that's it. It's a cool party, loads of great local producers, and that's what it is. But yeah, we've been fortunate enough to actually start the first one outside of Chicago in Shoreditch, and we had some, so again, same concept, great bands, great beer.
Great food, local food, street vendors,
yeah.
and we paired all the food with the beer. So when you went and queued up for a burger or a pulled pork or whatever, we had beers we said recommended with, and it's a great fun way to, you're not sort of, it's not a sort of PR event. We're just sort of shoving the brand down people's throats. They're having a great time. Listening to some fantastic music. They're getting involved with the local food producers, and we're talking about beer there, and we don't have to talk about it to the massive crowd all the time. We've got it there with the food vendors, but downstairs in the vintage bar, where Josh and I were largely based, we're talking about some of the specialty beers. So we had Bourbon County Stout. We had some of the Sour Sisters. We had a few bottles of Brewery Yard there. And it gives us a chance to really sort of talk about those beers to people. And that's where John did his little talk, where, you could hear a pin drop, because, you've got one of the early innovators of the American craft beer movement, still going strong, talking about his beer, passionate about it. Talking to all those bloggers and writers and the guys who turned up to taste the beer. It was just a fantastic moment.
Yeah, so this is actually as well something that we're doing annually. This isn't just, we did a one-off block party, so block party is now going to be happening annually, end of September. It's normally around the time, so look out for next year. But also as well, we did 312 Day. So the guys in the brewery wanted to come up with based on the beer, wanted to come up with their own kind of bank holiday or holiday day. So 312, it's backwards for us in the UK, but it's the 12th of March. It's not the 3rd of December. But there is now going to be a 312 Day in the UK. So if you're ever wondering what to do, check on our website, and we had the Mystery Jets headline an awesome gig, and bring again Bourbon County on tap. So if you ever got a hankering.
So in terms of having that block party and the raised awareness of your beers, is that something that the partnership with ABI has allowed? Has that given you the opportunity to do that?
It absolutely has, and that's because it's a lot of investment to do these. We're not making money on these block parties. We're investing because it's all about that. It's that culture of giving, which Goose Island have always, we've always had in the Chicago area. We want to take that to other cities, UK, where we've been buying the beer for a while. It's created my job. Without these, I would.
You're not complaining.
I know, but I love
he sounds like a right winger, doesn't he?
Before we go any further,
yeah.
I'm going to drink or say cheers. So.
Okay, cheers.
Absolutely right.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Let the beer take centre stage.
Chocolate. I get huge amounts of chocolate.
I get molasses.
Yeah, sweet molasses.
Yeah.
Horrible. Obviously, everyone's silent.
I almost can't stop smiling. I'm so happy right now.
Sit in the corner somewhere.
Yeah,
Podcast over.
That is so good. There's a velvety smoothness to it. There's all sorts of flavours going on. There's chocolate. There's coffee. It's just so well balanced. Yeah.
So summer, it is. It's the right time of year, coming into autumn, end of summer. It's lovely, and
it's interesting. If we go back to one of the comments that was made on the, it was either on the previous show or it was earlier on in this show. I don't know. They've all kind of merged into one.
Last show, yeah.
In terms of people that will moan about your core brands and their ownership. But yet those same people will still queue up outside a supermarket in the States to buy this beer on the day of release. Yeah. That's that's got to be
very conflicting for those people.
Conflicting for those people, but good for you guys because
all conflicting for you guys as well, because you're having to deal with the earlier topics we spoke about, where you're talking about big beers, beer has changed, all that kind of stuff, and no one says
No one says this is
booed
changed.
about it. No one says, "Oh, this has changed."
Yeah.
Shit
Oh,
this year.
yeah. Oh,
I'm not queuing up for this.
yeah.
No,
Fucking
that doesn't
AVI.
happen.
What have they done to that
Yeah, what have they
beer?
done to that
They've
beer?
ruined that, haven't they?
I think Bourbon County has had, it's just had that impact in the industry that it's an icon. It almost doesn't matter what's happened around it. It's Bourbon County. You know?
But it's the same with this beer as any other beer. Why change something that works?
And that works.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That-
What year is this one? Just so.
So this is 2015. So this is last year's batch. We haven't released 2016 yet in Chicago. That'll happen on Black Friday when we release the beer every year.
Do you mean Black Fridays in the day
Last
when they do all the
Thursday,
sales?
last Thursday in November,
they're
before
sales.
Thanksgiving.
So
Yeah.
we release this
Awful
on.
day.
Well, but it's a great day if you're in Chicago.
And you're drinking Bourbon County.
Yeah, I bet it is.
So yeah, we release it once a year. My first 2 months out there was to work Black Friday. So Binny's is the specialist wholesaler the specialist retailer that sells our Bourbon County. We had 1,100 people queuing outside. Some of them 2 days
Do you have
before
like those mad rush when the doors open and people just suddenly come charging
it's
in?
It's an orderly queue because
Oh,
actually
it's
my
like
first
that.
job was
That won't
walk
go on
up.
YouTube.
Very civilised
It
and beer.
was 5:30 in the morning and was to chat to everyone about the different variants they can get that day. Give them a coffee and a donut, but literally these people, it was absolutely pouring rain, and some of these people have been queuing for 2 days. They've been intense. I mean, it's manic.
For this beer.
How much
Yes.
are they allowed to buy then? So that particular retailer,
So
how much are they allowed to buy once they go in?
So we had 1,100 tickets. So I
Yeah.
was literally giving out the tickets to all the guys. We had 1,100 tickets, and we do different variants. So you'd get up to 2 original, 1 of each variant for that year. So we had 6 that year with our rare. That's what they could get for their allotment. So
Do most people buy their allotment?
not everybody. And the interesting thing
Really?
for me,
I'm surprised at that.
I was
as well.
gonna say, you- but surely you're-
buying everything I can.
If you're at the front of that queue, you're going to get the lot, aren't you?
I would have bought the lot. The interesting thing for me is we had extra tickets. We had, in terms of printed, but not actual amounts to give out. So I had 1,101, and I was waiting in queue for that guy.
That one guy.
That one guy. There was 2 mates that were walking up, and the one guy got there first, and I was just like, I'm so sorry, mate, but you missed out. But I got a picture of the ticket and we sorted them out. So not everybody does. I mean, I buy my whole allotment. I buy the next guy's allotment plus that.
That means they're queuing up to buy maybe only 2 bottles of beer.
Some people do.
You would get it all when you would
If I'm
literally
queuing
get
out,
it all.
You got,
yeah.
but
I mean,
some people are on a budget. I get
Yeah,
it. Some
yeah.
people are on a budget, and you have to kind of respect
Yeah.
that maybe they can't.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's not a cheap beer.
I mean, I remember
So-
listening to a podcast a little while ago where a bloke who had lived in Chicago for a while remembered when Bourbon County Stout used to be a 4-pack
Yeah.
in the supermarket, you know, sitting alongside the 6-pack of IPA. And now, you guys are doing ticketed events to release it. That's quite a change.
We're producing more of it than
Yeah.
probably back in those days.
But there's obviously quite a history to the barrel aging that you guys do. So how did it start? Why did they bother starting it? Because there can't have been anything else like that in the States.
No, so I mean, it was actually, we go back to the last episode really, when Greg Hall joined in 1992, we had our IPA, our Honkers Ale was out doing traditional styles. You know, Greg's first first goal was to do something innovative. We were coming up to our 1,000th batch at the brewery, which, you know, is a special time for a brewery and you make a special beer. So there was barrel aging happening in the home brewing community, people were playing with it, but no commercial brewery had actually brought that to market in terms of bourbon barrel and getting the flavour from the bourbon barrel. So Greg was just like, you know, let's do it. Let's do an imperial stout, which we brewed to around about 12%, and let's put that straight into a wet bourbon barrel and age it for around sort of 10 months. And you know, even just to go back from that kind of light bulb moment of how did he get to that style of beer in that barrel. Greg was on a beer bourbon cigar dinner, beer bourbon cigar, and Booker No was there for whiskey, and Greg was there for the beer, and they were next to each other, and Greg had this idea and sort of turned to Booker, you know, he's a grandson of Jim Beam, and said, what do you do with your barrels after you use them? And Greg managed to secure 6. We were still at the Clybourne Brew Pub. We got 6 sent in, freshly emptied.
So the original Bourbon County stand is Jim Beam.
The original barrels, 6 barrels
one, yeah.
from Jim Beam came in, and these barrels are wet in terms of they have devil's cut in them. You know, the guys are sent up to half a gallon of the previous occupant in there, and we just pitch straight on top. And then we'll age it for that 10 months, and it's in an untemperature regulated environment. So you'll get the kind of Chicago's great. Really cold winters, really warm summers. Those staves are contracted. They're expanding. They're contracting. Expanding, contracting. You're getting lots of flavour in and out. You're actually bringing oxygen in as well, which in normal beer terms is bad, but in a high ABV beer.
Yeah, very slow aging. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's great, and you pick up those raisin flavours. So actually, we entered this beer into the Great American Beer Festival, or the guys did at the time, and we got disqualified.
Because there wasn't if I remember correctly, there's no category at the
There
time.
wasn't a category at the time, but the judges that were taking notes were just like desiccated coconut, vanilla, coffee, things roastiness, things you'll get, and they were like, this beer is amazing.
Tastes like whiskey.
This is so different. And I've not had flavours like this in beer before. It's not true to style. Unfortunately, we can't give it an award, but this should win gold in something. And it opened up that style. The following years.
I love that comment. It's not true to style.
That's
We sometimes we are so inhibited by styles that we should just let that go. And if the beer tastes good, just go with it.
And it's the interesting thing when you're. I've done a little bit of beer judging. I was at European Beer Star this year, and we were talking about. It's based in Munich, and it's really interesting. You're talking about. We were told brief beforehand as the judges panel to say, if you let a gold medal winner be like a classic German Pilsner, and you think that might be dry hop with a modern German hop, you are changing the style guidelines right here. So it's also it's that element of staying true to the traditional style, but it's also for the judges to decide what's allowed in terms of innovation. Does it deserve a new beer style? And that's the thing with Bourbon County, is that it did create a new beer style in that in the beer judging categories. Because it really was innovative in its use of barrel aging, and that comes back to you were talking about. I think in the last episode, I think the Belgians have something to say about that. We and in the UK, we've aged beer in barrels for many centuries, but this was innovative in the fact it was the first commercial beer aged in what I like to call active barrels. So the barrel is actively giving you flavour into the beer, whether that's from the wood itself, the vanillins, the tannins from the oak, or whether that's from the bourbon whiskey, or whatever other barrel you might want to use. Obviously, we're using bourbon here, and that generates flavour and adds something special to the beer. We have aged beer in wood for years, but brewers have been at massive pains to make sure that wood has been totally inactive and inert. It doesn't offer any flavour into the beer other than originally a storage, but now we understand about the workings of sort of micro-oxidization and that part of the aging process. So in terms of barrel innovation, using an active barrel with half a gallon is about 4 litres, I think, in new money of bourbon in that wood, getting into the beer and giving it some sort of magic flavour, which has provided us with Bourbon County. And and most craft breweries in the States and the UK and other countries now, many of them will produce a barrel-aged imperial stout or barrel-aged barley wine using rum, Irish whiskey, Scotch whiskey, whatever it might be. You want to introduce those flavours into amazing beer and to generate another level of flavour complexity.
We've even turned it full circle. I started doing whiskey and beer.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
have one at home.
So we've gone full circle on that. I mean, I'm a big whiskey fan myself.
Is it the Grants of Glenfiddich, I think, have an ale cast finish? Yeah.
So we think actually it's gone a long way. Just for a purely statistical, what percentage does Bourbon County pitch up at?
So it goes in at about 11.9, 12%. It goes up to about 14.2. It picks up, but the ABV can vary year to year, but it's around 14.2.
Okay, so we're red wine.
Red wine strength. It's not mind blowing for drinkers of most beer and wine. But it's
in terms of this year. From 2016 onwards, it's going to be pasteurised.
Yeah.
Now, what, and obviously there have been, as always, people that have had a view on that fact that it's going to change the beer, it's going to destroy the beer. What were the decisions behind pasteurising this beer, and do you guys think it's going to affect the flavour of it in any way?
So, we know it's not going to affect the flavour because this is not just we changed our decision. There's a lot of thought, process, and investment in this. Last year, 2015, we had some issues. We've been doing this now for over 20 years, and it's the first time that we've ever had it was a lacto that got into the beer. And I drank some of those beers that had it. For me, they had an acidity in there that it wasn't for me like it wasn't unpleasant, but it wasn't true to style. So we had to put that aside. And the guys have worked on it a lot this year. And yes, we're pasteurizing 2016. The reason for that is that you're basically killing the kind of the bacteria that can be there, but actually it's not going to affect flavour. We've done triangle blind tasting with panels outside of the brewery. Nobody has picked up the flavour differences, and actually in terms of aging the beer as well, which can be another thing, it's not affecting the aging of the beer, because actually it's the oxidization that provides that aging for Bourbon County Stout. So
it's not. I think if you tip out of Bourbon County, there's not the yeast in the bottom at all. It's not like it's like a bottle condition with lots and lots of yeast or anything. It's not.
It's because of the high ABV that actually it's the oxidization that provides the aging. So the aging will age the same. And the other side of it as well that we've actually.
Sorry, what's the benefit then of leaving it in the bottle? So say you've got, I don't know, I presume at Goose Island you've probably got, in my head you've got this magical cellar which has every Bourbon County Stout.
I can see that cellar as well.
Yeah. Which
It's
they're going to
It's like a magical crystal
So when you
cave.
It's like giant one alley.
Yeah.
we have a pass. You don't have a pass?
No.
No,
okay.
Damn. So does it change with age in the bottle?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's exactly it. It's the oxidization that provides that aging character to the beer, and that's still going to happen. The beer is still going to get those flavors. It's going to age the same. It's going to have these same flavor notes as it ages.
So do these beers, as well as aging,
It's a crown.
do they increase in value? Because to liken it in the UK, Fuller's Vintage Ales over the last couple of years
I've increased it, yeah.
I know I have a couple of boxes of them.
sought after,
Maybe I should.
and the value, say from the 1997 one, is now over 500 quid.
So for us at Goose, the way we put our beers into the market, we put the beers into the market at. We don't suggest retail price. We don't. It's not that we don't back increases. That's up to the vendor. They do what they want to do. We sell everything in at a base level, and you see what you get.
The market takes over.
Places where they have charged more, but we don't ever recommend to people. There is no ladder of what you can charge for.
So, but if I wanted, say, someone decided they were going to sell their cellar's worth, what would
You valuing your cellar here?
I haven't got any.
Is that essentially what you're doing?
Do you know someone who does, and what's their number?
I do. I want their passes very soon. What would it go for? Is there a value attached to it though?
For
say the original
Aged Bourbon County.
what age?
I mean,
starting
we don't. I think, as Josh said, we don't really get involved with any of those. If it sells, it's like anything. If someone's prepared to, if someone on eBay or wherever, I don't even know if it's legal to sell alcohol on eBay, but if someone on eBay wants to pay $100, £100, whatever it might be for a bottle of Bourbon County, then that's, I guess, what the market says it's worth. It's nothing to do with us, and we don't really get involved with it, other than selling it initially when we release it.
Absolutely, and actually, there's a bottle up on the shelf here at the White Horse. Sorry, we're in the White Horse Parsons Green, and there's
when he says it's a bottle, it's an empty bottle.
It's an empty bottle. I'm sorry, and I should have brought it up.
Don't be clambering over it and fighting over that
There's
bottle.
a bottle up there. First to get it gets to drink it. No, it's 2010. That's our rare version with Pappy Van Winkle barrels. Aged for 2 years on 23-year-old barrels. Really very limited and rare. Personally, if I found a bottle of that unemptied and I wanted to buy it, I would probably pay money for it that other people think was stupid, and because I want to try it.
You want to try it.
And that's me personally outside of my job. But I couldn't put a figure on that because actually I probably.
I quite like the fact you don't.
Yeah.
But like I said, it started to creep in over here where value is being attached and we're being told what.
Yeah, I mean, it depends who you're told by, because it certainly wouldn't be told by us, because we sell it at the beginning when it's released, and if some guy in wherever.
What are you prepared to pay?
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting one because a year ago, I think it was probably a year ago, where we started to see, as you say, there's a certain amount of value attached to the Fuller's vintage beers.
Yeah.
So will that impact on people buying them this year? So are you going to buy more this year because you know how rapidly they're going to go up? But by the fact of you buying more, is that going to reduce their value?
Are you buying it? It depends if you're a drinker, and this is the same thing with them, whether you buy whiskey or wine or beer that's going to age. Are you buying it as an investment, or are you buying it because you want to drink it? For me, I've got loads of Fuller's Vintage Ale. I've got loads of Fuller's Vintage Ale. I'm working with Goose now. I will collect as many bottles as I can possibly get my hands on. And you know what? It's going to be for me and my friends.
Yeah.
I'll never sell a bottle
Yeah.
because I don't want to buy to invest. If
Why
someone
would
wants
you
to
buy
buy,
and age something, or even buy some and age something,
Just to sell
and
it.
give it away?
Yeah, you
well,
wouldn't.
they
That's
make money out of
pointless.
it, right?
Absolutely, but be giving it away, and actually, I want to bloody taste it. The reason it's been sat in my cellar for 3 years, I want to see how that thing tastes.
Yeah, but some people will buy it.
I've got a vintage Ale 2000 at home, and I've told my son, because he was born in 2000, we're going to have it then. He will hate it, which means I get the whole lot to myself.
When he's how old?
18.
Well, you're following a great British tradition of majority ales. So you know about majority ales?
No.
So sort of more wealthy people had a special, very strong beer brewed on the birth of usually a son. Back in, you're talking about sort of 1800s, and perhaps before then as well. So strong beer they would brew on the birth of a son, and they would age for 21 years. Obviously, the old age, you're coming of age. And used to be called your majority, reaching your majority at 21, and you would tap that barrel at 21 and celebrate your son's 21st birthday.
Okay, I didn't
So
know
you-
what
go.
tradition.
So
So
you
you've
are
done it 3 years then.
No,
so you're following a fantastic tradition, great British tradition of brewing a majority ale. Obviously, you didn't brew it,
22
but
Yeah.
Counting down.
Let's just try and start to wrap this thing up now. Final thoughts on the Bourbon County.
Bloody amazing. It's everything I hoped it would be. It's got that sort of thick mouthfeel as well. Feels like you should sip it, even though you could drink it a lot quicker. You force yourself to sip it. Aroma, lovely. Chocolate, sweet molasses, loads of those dark flavours. But it hasn't got that overt sweetness.
I don't get a burn to it either. I just
That's
get
like one,
I get a really
warmth.
a really balanced beer, and it's one of those beers that you want to sit in front of a great big roaring open fire in a ridiculously huge brandy glass, and just enjoy it over the course of an evening.
And I think
maybe
a lot of people,
2 evenings.
A lot of people say talk about food pairings with this, and we might have tried lots of things, but for me, if I could sit in front of a roaring fire with you could smoke a cigar or a pipe with this. You can imagine this is a perfect.
Cigar over food,
absolutely.
We've done chocolate. I actually at the block party, I got Southeast Cakery made a Bourbon County Stout cake with a butter icing. Gave them a little amount to do, and it was unbelievable.
It's very, very good.
Yeah.
You do not want to see the face Steve is making
Can't talk right now over that.
Yeah.
Okay, final question then, guys. Really appreciate you spending 2 episodes with us talking about the beers that Goose Island produce. What's next for Goose Island? What else can we expect to see in the UK in the coming months, years?
I suppose the biggest thing that we're glad to announce is that we're going to be doing Black Friday in the UK. So Bourbon County Stout 2016
Hello.
is coming to the UK.
Where do we queue up for that? And
What
jump
shop do I need to be outside of?
So we haven't locked that down yet. We've got an idea, but actually jump onto the website because we will announce it on there, onto our Facebook page.
We're being reliably informed.
It's nothing like comments from the back of the room at this point, is there?
Backseat podcasters.
Yeah.
Somebody knows what they're doing, rather than us two reprobates.
That Bourbon County Wisconsin Med. So jump onto our Facebook page and we'll let you know. But actually, we're doing Black Friday here. There will be and I mean limited. So when I'm saying there is a limited amount, we're not trying to emulate these queuings. There is a limited amount. Obviously, of what's happened last year, we weren't even looking to get any Bourbon County Stout for 2016, but we managed to secure some. So rock up for that. So around that week, there's going to be some cool Bourbon County Stout things happening. Moving into next year, we're going to be doing Block Party. That's going to be at the end of September. It's going to be a great music festival. We're going to do 312 Day. And actually as well.
And also, but apart from that, on the more mainstream side, we've just released 312 in cans. We've got Goose Green Line Pale Ale just coming out, and 4-Star Pilsner. People are going to start seeing around. So those are sort of new, just adding to the range.
Will the rest of the range start coming in cans as well, or will it just be?
We've got some of the things coming in cans, so we'll release that information when we have when we have it in. IPA is going to definitely be in cans.
I was going to say that's the obvious, surely.
So it's going to be IPA 312, the first cans we want to introduce.
Martin, I know we do a normal, a regular roundup of blogs on the show. I know there's been a few that you've got in your bank related to this evening, and do you want to just give them a shout out?
Yeah, well, obviously a lot of the time, especially like tonight, a blog inspired a lot of what we talked about. So, from Justin, it was his blog that got us thinking about this.
Yep.
Thom contacted you, and here we are. What hasn't happened before is that one of our opinion polls, or series of opinion polls, has inspired a blog.
Yes, which
And
we had a
someone,
first.
someone has
yeah.
actually managed to write a blog based on our opinion polls over the last 3 days. So Ruth, who writes under Beer Fairy Blogs, has managed to write, apparently she couldn't write everything she wanted to say in 3 lots of 140 characters for each poll, and she's managed to write what has actually come to 3 pages
a
of
few pages,
A4.
yeah.
And she's written about all of the polls and her thoughts on it. So she's been very pragmatic all the way through it, and it caught my eye because she's mentioned Untapped on it as well, and given Beer O'Clock Show a shout out.
So ticks all the boxes.
As
far as I'm
the
concerned.
link to her blog will be in the show notes as well. So it was called Opinions on Hopinions, so that was quite good. And just to reiterate that Justin's one was called The Moral High Ground, Shades of Grey, and that's on Get Beer, Drink Beer. London Beer blog by PJ McKerry at Brew Geekery also inspired a bit about the historical beer styles. And a couple of ones about the actual brewery block party, which until you explained it to me, which is really obvious when you said it. So from Ruth and Matt, they both did blog posts on that, and the links to those will be in the show notes as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And I just want to say, I suppose, end this evening by really thanking everybody that got involved in the 3 polls that we did, because normally we just did 1 poll, but people kept engaged over the 3 evenings. And obviously we purposely kept it ambiguous,
Yep.
because we didn't want people to form an opinion before they had an opinion. I suppose. So it's been an interesting experience for us. Guys, we've really appreciated sitting here with you over the 2 shows and talking about the beers, talking about the background to the beers, and literally, you know, you guys have been really open, so thank you for that. If anybody still wants to get involved in this discussion, just, you know where we are. Tweet us, use a hashtag.
Yeah.
Let us know what your thoughts are on these 2 shows, and generally, so thanks to Josh and Johnny.
Thank you very
For
much.
Thanks for
this
having us,
evening.
guys. It's been
Really enjoyed
Cheers.
it.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.